welcome back. Today I want to share the story of Sisyphus, the king of Corinth. He is a very fascinating story in Greek mythology, and it's one that I've been very excited to share. If you want more stories just like this, consider subscribing so that you're notified when new videos go out every Monday. For now, enjoy the story. Sisyphus, the cunning and ambitious king of Corinth, was not a man of brute strength, nor was he blessed with divine favor. He was not a warrior, nor a demigod, nor the descendant of some great hero. His power did not lie in the blessings of the gods, but in the sharpness of his mind. He saw the world as a game of strategy, where strength could be outmatched by wit, and fate could be bent by those clever enough to find its cracks. Under his rule, Corinth flourished. The city stood at the crossroads of trade, where merchants from all over Greece and beyond sought passage. Sisyphus ensured its prosperity not through war, but through deception. Treaties woven with half-truths and pacts that favored Corinth at the expense of others. He did not fear the gods, nor did he humble himself before them. Where others saw divine will, he saw opportunities. Where others prayed, he planned. Yet his hubris would bring him to the attention of Zeus himself. It began, as many such stories do, with the wrath of Zeus. The king of the gods was known for his frequent affairs, taking mortal women against their will or by trickery, leaving behind a trail of divine bastards. One such abduction was of the river nymph Aegina, daughter of Sisyphus, the river god. Zeus, cloaked in shadow, had stolen her away in the dead of night, spiriting her off to an isolated island. Her father, Sisyphus, searched desperately for his missing daughter, but the will of Zeus was law, and no mortal nor god dared defy him. But Sisyphus, always a dealer of secrets, saw an opportunity. When Sisyphus came to Corinth in his search, the king revealed the truth. Aegina had been taken by Zeus, and the chances of finding her were all but impossible. In exchange for this knowledge, Sisyphus gifted Sisyphus a spring of fresh water to nourish Corinth, ensuring the city's eternal prosperity. But Zeus was not a god to be betrayed lightly. Furious that a mere mortal had exposed his actions, he decreed that Sisyphus must die. He called upon Thanatos, the god of death, to personally ensure that the king of Corinth's soul would be taken to the underworld. But Sisyphus had no intention of surrendering. When Thanatos arrived in Corinth, draped in his black shroud with cold, skeletal hands stretched out to claim his soul, Sisyphus met him not with fear but with preparation. He had expected this. He had foreseen the wrath of Zeus and laid his trap accordingly. Through flattery and cunning words, Sisyphus convinced Thanatos to demonstrate how his chains worked. The ancient bindings forged in the depths of the underworld, designed to hold a soul fast and prevent any escape. Curious, Thanatos obliged, fastening the chains upon himself, and Sisyphus encouraged him. And in that moment, the king of Corinth snapped the locks shut. Thanatos struggled, but the bindings were unbreakable. Sisyphus had done the impossible. He had imprisoned death itself. Following this, the world descended into chaos. Soldiers on the battlefield found themselves wounded but never perishing, their bodies torn to pieces, yet still clinging to life. The elderly, their bodies failing, lingered in agonizing suffering, unable to pass on. The underworld grew eerily silent as no souls crossed the river Styx, and Hades found his kingdom empty. For a time, Sisyphus lived as a god among men. He had done what no mortal had dared to dream of. He had conquered death itself. But the gods do not let such defiance go unanswered. Ares, the god of war, soon realized the unnatural stillness of battle. Frustrated and enraged, he descended upon Corinth, breaking the chains that held Thanatos captive. Death, once freed, wasted no time in correcting the imbalance, and this time there would be no more tricks and no more deception. Sisyphus was taken by force to the underworld, dragged beyond the veil of mortality, but even then, his cunning had not yet run dry. As Sisyphus arrived at the gates of the underworld, the shadowed expanse of Hell's domain stretched before him, an endless twilight where lost souls wandered in silent procession towards their final judgment. The river Styx glistened darkly, its waters churning with the wails of the dead, and beyond it stood the throne of Hades himself, where the gods of the underworld sat in cold, emotionless judgment. Most mortals quaked at the sight, knowing their fate was sealed, but Sisyphus was not most men. He had prepared for this very moment. Before his capture, he had whispered a final instruction to his wife, Merope. She was not to offer a traditional funeral. No coin was to be placed beneath the tongue, no offerings made to guide his soul to its proper resting place. As he stood before Hades and Persephone, he fell to his knees not in supplication, but in calculated deceit. "O great Lord of the dead," he pleaded, "I have been sent here unjustly. My wife, in her grief, has failed to perform the sacred rites, and without them I am but a wandering soul, lost between the worlds of the living and the dead. If you grant me leave to return, I shall ensure that the rites are observed, and I will return willingly to your realm." Hades was unmoved, but Persephone, the queen of the underworld, was not as cold as her husband. She had once lived among the living and understood the bonds of love. She took pity on the cunning king and allowed him to return to the world above, on the promise that he would come back once his rites were complete. Sisyphus swore to the gods that he would keep his word, and then, as soon as he stepped back into the sunlight, he vanished. For years, Sisyphus defied fate itself. He walked among the living, defying death a second time through sheer wit and trickery. He ruled once more, though his name became whispered in infamy. Some feared him, believing that he struck a bargain with the gods themselves. Others admired him, seeing in him a mortal who had broken free from destiny. But no man, no matter how cunning, can outrun the gods forever. Zeus, now personally invested in his punishment, ordered Hermes, the swift messenger, to drag Sisyphus back by force. This time, there would be no tricks, no pleading, and no illusions. The gods had grown tired of his defiance. Sisyphus was eventually brought once more before Hades, and this time, there would be no mercy. For his crimes, the deception of the gods, his defiance of death, and his corruption of the natural order, he was sentenced to a punishment as endless as his ambition. He was led to a vast, desolate plain at the foot of the underworld. There, a great boulder stood impossibly large, its surface jagged and rough. Hades, with a voice like the weight of eternity, gave his final decree. "For all of eternity, you shall push this boulder up the hill. Each time you near the peak, it shall slip from your grasp and roll back to the bottom, and you shall begin again." And so it was. Day after day, century upon century, Sisyphus struggled against his fate. His muscles strained, his breath became ragged gasps, and yet, just as the summit came within reach, the boulder would lurch free tumbling back to the base of the hill, mocking him with its finality. His punishment was not pain, nor fire, nor torment in the traditional sense. It was something far worse, made just for Sisyphus himself. The endless repetition of futile effort. The man who had once bested the gods, outwitted death, and ruled by cunning alone was now nothing more than a figure of endless struggle. Yet, even in his punishment, Sisyphus remains a symbol of defiance. Some say that as he labors, he still harbors a glimmer of rebellion. That even as he watches the boulder roll back for the 1,000th time, the millionth, he smiles, knowing that he made the gods work for their vengeance. The tale of Sisyphus is one of tragedy, but also of human persistence. His fate is a warning, a reminder of the limits of mortal arrogance, but it is also a story of endurance. A simple man, though bound by divine punishment, refuses to break beneath the weight of the gods themselves. His legend endures, whispered in the halls of the dead, carried on the lips of poets and philosophers, the tale of a king who cheated death only to find himself locked in its eternal grasp. And yet, upon the hills of the underworld, the boulder still rolls.